Stop right now. Take a breath. And listen carefully. Not tomorrow. Not after this video. Right now. If you are tired, frustrated, doubting yourself, or questioning your path, this story is for you. Not because you are weak. Not because you failed. But because you are human. And being human means feeling lost sometimes, even when you are trying your best. There are moments when you sit quietly and wonder, am I doing enough? Moments when you feel like everyone else is moving forward while you are standing still. Moments when your mind feels heavy, your chest feels tight, and your confidence feels distant. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it, and that feeling slowly drains you. Most people don't fail because they are not talented. They fail because they lose focus. That is the part nobody wants to admit. Talent gets celebrated. Discipline gets ignored. Focus gets overlooked. People love talking about success, but they rarely talk about what success actually demands. It demands attention. It demands patience. It demands sacrifice. And that is where most people struggle. At the beginning, everything feels different. You remember that feeling, don't you? The fire in your chest. The belief in your heart. The excitement that made you say, "This time I'm serious." You had plans. Real plans. You imagined a better version of yourself. Stronger. Calmer. More confident. You told yourself, "I'm going to change my life." And for a while you meant it. You woke up early. You worked late. You felt proud of yourself. But then, slowly, quietly, distraction crept in. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just small moments. You checked your phone more often. You compared your progress to someone else's success. You started watching instead of doing. At first, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt harmless. Just a quick scroll. Just a look at what others are doing. Just a moment of curiosity. But those moments added up. You began measuring your life against someone else's timeline. You looked at their wins and ignored their struggles. You saw their results and forgot your own journey. And slowly your focus shifted. From your path to their path. From your growth to their highlights. From your effort to their outcomes. And before you realized it, your energy was gone. You still worked, but it felt heavier. You still tried, but it felt slower. You started questioning yourself. Why am I not there yet? Why does it look so easy for them? Am I even good enough? Those questions didn't make you stronger. They made you tired. Because comparison doesn't inspire. It drains. Every time you looked at someone else's success, you felt smaller. Every time you compared timelines, you felt behind. Every time you searched for validation, you lost confidence. And the worst part? You didn't even notice it happening. You thought you were just staying informed. You thought you were being realistic. But in reality, you were losing focus. And focus is everything. The truth is simple but uncomfortable. You cannot win while watching everyone else. You cannot build your future while constantly checking someone else's progress. You cannot grow while your attention is divided. You cannot become powerful while your mind is scattered. Winning demands focus. Deep, uncomfortable, lonely focus. The kind of focus that doesn't get applause. The kind of focus that feels boring. The kind of focus that requires saying no to things that feel good in the moment. Focus means choosing your work over entertainment. Focus means choosing progress over approval. Focus means choosing discipline over motivation. And that is not easy. Because focus isolates you. While others are talking, you are working. While others are scrolling, you are practicing. While others are seeking attention, you are building skill. That can feel lonely. Very lonely. There will be nights when you question your choices. Nights when you wonder if it's worth it. Nights when silence feels louder than noise. You won't get immediate rewards. You won't get instant validation. You won't get praise for staying consistent. And that is where most people quit. They mistake silence for failure. They mistake slow progress for no progress. They mistake loneliness for being lost. But silence is not failure. Silence is preparation. Roots grow in silence before trees break the surface. When you focus deeply, something changes inside you. Not quickly, not loudly, but steadily. You begin to understand yourself better. You notice your weaknesses without judging them. You start fixing small things consistently. Your habits improve. Your mindset becomes calmer. Your reactions become slower and more intentional. And slowly, confidence starts forming. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The moment you decide to focus on yourself, everything begins to change. Not your circumstances. Not the world around you. You change. You stop asking, why them? And start asking, what can I do today? You stop waiting for motivation. And start relying on discipline. You stop chasing results and start building systems. You realize that improvement is not about massive effort. It is about consistent effort. One focused hour beats 10 distracted ones. One disciplined day beats a week of excuses. One honest step beats endless planning. And for the first time in a long time, you feel in control. There will be days when you still doubt yourself. That never fully goes away. But now doubt doesn't stop you. It walks beside you. You move forward even when you feel unsure. You work even when you feel tired. You stay consistent even when progress feels invisible. That is focus. And focus builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds belief. Belief builds results. One day, without warning, you realize something important. You are no longer desperate for validation. You are no longer obsessed with comparison. You are no longer distracted by noise. Your mind feels clearer. Your energy feels stronger. Your purpose feels real. And people begin to notice. They ask what changed. They say you seem different. They say you're lucky. But you know the truth. Luck had nothing to do with it. Focus did. Winning doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in thousands of quiet decisions. The decision to show up. The decision to stay consistent. The decision to focus when distraction is easier. And when winning finally arrives, it doesn't feel loud. It feels earned. It feels calm. It feels solid. Because you didn't rush. You didn't copy. You didn't chase attention. You focused. And here is the most important part. Winning is not the end. It is proof. Proof that when you focus on yourself, results follow. Proof that discipline beats distraction. Proof that patience beats comparison. So if you are struggling right now, remember this. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not incapable. You are just distracted. Bring your focus back. Back to your habits. Back to your growth. Back to your path. Ignore the noise. Trust the process. Stay consistent. Focus on you until you win. And when you win, focus again. Because the real victory is becoming someone who never loses themselves to distraction again. Distraction does not arrive loudly. It arrives politely. It doesn't knock on the door and announce itself. It slips in quietly like a guest who smiles too much and stays too long. It looks like scrolling just for 5 minutes. You tell yourself you deserve a break. You worked hard today. Just 5 minutes. Just one video. Just one post. But 5 minutes turns into 30. 30 turns into an hour. And suddenly, the day feels shorter than it should have been. It sounds like listening to opinions that don't matter. People who don't know your struggle. People who don't carry your responsibilities. People who talk confidently about paths they never walked. Their words stick in your mind. They create doubt. They plant fear. You didn't ask for their advice, but you absorbed it anyway. It feels like checking what others are doing instead of doing what you should. You open your phone to reply to one message, and somehow you end up watching someone else live a life you think you want. They look happy. They look successful. They look ahead of you. And without realizing it, you start comparing. Not their struggles. Not their failures. Only their best moments. Day by day, distraction steals your attention. Not all at once. Slowly. And that is what makes it dangerous. Attention turns into wasted time. You don't notice it at first. You still feel busy. You still feel tired. You still feel like you did a lot. But when you look back, you can't clearly say what moved you forward. Wasted time turns into regret. Not loud regret. Quiet regret. The kind you feel late at night when everything is silent. The kind you feel when you think about how much potential you have, and how little of it you use today. You promise yourself tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow you'll focus. Tomorrow you'll start again. But tomorrow comes with the same distractions. People often say they lack motivation. That is rarely true. Most people don't wake up wanting to fail. They don't want to stay stuck. They don't enjoy feeling behind. They want to do better. They want to feel proud of themselves. But motivation isn't the real problem. They lack clarity. Their mind is full of noise. Too many voices. Too many comparisons. Too many expectations. Everyone wants something from them. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone thinks they know the right way. And slowly their own voice gets quieter. They don't know what to focus on anymore. They don't know what matters. They don't know where to start. So they do a little bit of everything. And a whole lot of nothing. When your focus is scattered, your effort becomes weak. Not because you don't care, but because your energy is divided. You start many things. You finish few. You work but without direction. You try but without commitment. And that makes you feel worse. Because deep down, you know you are capable of more. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when distraction becomes a habit. You reach for your phone without thinking. You check notifications even when there are none. You feel uncomfortable sitting with silence. Silence forces you to face yourself, your thoughts, your doubts, your unfinished goals. Distraction protects you from that discomfort, but it also keeps you stuck. You tell yourself you're tired. You tell yourself you'll do it later. You tell yourself now is not the right time. And those excuses feel reasonable. They sound logical. They don't feel like quitting. But over time they add up. And one day you wake up and realize how much time passed. That realization hurts. Not because time passed, but because you know you could have used it better. When your focus is scattered, even big effort feels small. You push, but you don't move far. You try harder, but results don't change. That's when frustration grows. You start questioning yourself. Why am I not progressing? Why does it feel so hard? Why does everyone else seem ahead? And comparison creeps back in. You look at others and assume they are more disciplined, more talented, more lucky. But you don't see their focus. You don't see the hours they protected. You don't see the distractions they removed. You don't see the things they said no to. Because focus is invisible. Until results appear. But when your focus becomes sharp, even small effort becomes powerful. This is where everything changes. Sharp focus feels different. Calmer. Clear. You stop trying to do everything. You choose one thing that matters today. Just one. And you give it your full attention. No phone nearby. No unnecessary noise. No multitasking. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind wanders. You feel restless. But then something happens. You start to feel present. Time slows down. Your thoughts become quieter. Your effort becomes intentional. And that one small task moves forward. It's not dramatic, but it's real. The next day you do it again. And again. Small effort. Same direction. And slowly momentum builds. Focus is not about doing more. It is about removing what doesn't matter. This is the part most people miss. They think productivity means adding more tasks, more goals, more pressure. But real focus works in reverse. It asks, what is unnecessary? What is distracting? What is draining my energy without giving anything back? Sometimes that means limiting social media. Sometimes it means distancing yourself from certain conversations. Sometimes it means saying no even when it feels uncomfortable. Removing things feels scary. It feels like you're missing out. But clarity lives on the other side of that fear. When you remove distractions, you create space. Space to think. Space to reflect. Space to work deeply. And deep work changes you. And what doesn't matter most of the time is what everyone else is doing. Their pace is not your pace. Their path is not your path. Their success does not define yours. The moment you stop watching everyone else, you reclaim your energy. You stop reacting. You start directing. You stop comparing. You start creating. You stop consuming. You start building. That shift is quiet but powerful. You become less anxious, less rushed, less frustrated. You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining yourself. You focus. There will be days when focus feels boring. Days when progress feels slow. Days when distractions tempt you back. That's normal. Focus is not exciting every day, but it is effective every day. And effectiveness compounds. One focused hour becomes a focused week. A focused week becomes a focused month. The focused month changes your life. Not because you worked harder than everyone else, but because you worked with intention. One day you look back and notice something. You're calmer, more confident, more grounded. Not because everything is perfect, but because you know what you're working toward. You trust yourself again. And that trust is everything. Because when you trust yourself, you stop sabotaging your own progress. You stop quitting early. You stop doubting every step. You move forward quietly, consistently. Distraction will always exist. The world will always compete for your attention. But now you recognize it. You notice when it arrives politely. You smile back. And you say no. You choose focus. Not because it's easy, but because it works. And over time, that choice changes everything. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or applause. No dramatic music plays in the background. No one sends you a message saying, "This is it. This is the moment." It shows up quietly. Sometimes it comes late at night, when the world has finally gone still and your phone screen has gone dark. Sometimes it comes early in the morning when you're staring at the ceiling before the day begins, already tired of a life you haven't even stepped into yet. And sometimes it comes after disappointment, after another plan falls apart, after another promise to yourself goes unkept. It's not a loud decision. Not a public announcement. It's a quiet one. A decision you don't post about. A decision you don't explain to anyone. A decision you almost don't even trust yourself to say out loud. You decide that from today you will focus on yourself. At first, the thought feels strange, maybe even selfish. You've spent so much time looking outward, measuring yourself against others, reacting to opinions, chasing approval, avoiding judgment. The idea of turning your attention inward feels unfamiliar, like walking into a room you've ignored for years. But something inside you knows it's time. Not your critics, not your competitors, not the past, just you, your habits, your mindset, your discipline. And when you really sit with that thought, you realize how rare it is. How long it's been since you genuinely chose yourself without conditions, without waiting for permission, without waiting for circumstances to improve. You start to see how much energy you've been spending on things that don't move you forward. Replaying conversations in your head. Imagining what others think of you. Carrying old mistakes like proof that you're not ready yet. You don't let it go all at once. That takes time. But you notice it, and noticing is the beginning of change. This is the moment when excuses lose power. Not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you stop using difficulty as a reason to stand still. You've always had reasons. Everyone does. Lack of time. Lack of money. Lack of support. Lack of confidence. And for a long time those reasons felt valid. They felt protective. They kept you safe from failure. But they also kept you stuck. Now something shifts. Blame disappears. Not because other people never did you wrong, but because you finally realize that blaming them doesn't build the life you want. It only keeps you tied to what already happened. And you're tired of living there. Waiting ends. You've waited for the right time. The right mood. The right sign. The right version of yourself. You've told yourself, I'll start when things are perfect. When I have more confidence. When I have more clarity. When I feel ready. But readiness never arrived. So you change the sentence. You start saying, I'll start with what I have. What you have might not feel like much. Maybe it's just a few minutes of effort. A small routine. A simple promise you can actually keep. Maybe it's waking up a little earlier. Turning your phone off a little sooner. Choosing one habit instead of trying to fix everything at once. It's not impressive. It's not dramatic. But it's real. And for the first time you're not waiting for motivation. You've chased motivation before. You know how unreliable it is. Comes in waves, strong one day, gone the next. You felt that excitement before, the rush of imagining a better future, followed by the quiet disappointment when the feeling fades and nothing changes. So this time you don't chase it. You build consistency. Consistency doesn't feel good at first. It's repetitive. It's boring. It asks you to show up even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. Some days you'll do the bare minimum. And that's okay. Because the bare minimum done consistently still moves you forward. It still builds trust with yourself. It still proves something important, that you don't quit just because it's uncomfortable. You begin to notice small changes before big ones. You notice how your mornings feel different when you don't rush. How your mind feels clearer when you keep one promise to yourself. How your confidence grows quietly without needing validation. It's subtle. Almost unnoticeable at first. But it's there. And then you realize something else. This decision changes everything because now your energy is no longer leaking. Before, your energy was everywhere. Pulled into arguments you didn't need to win. Drained by comparisons that never ended. Lost in regrets you couldn't fix. You were tired all the time, not because you were doing too much, but because your focus was scattered. Now your energy is finally directed. You wake up with intention even if the day isn't perfect. You move with purpose even when progress feels slow. You speak to yourself with honesty instead of cruelty. You still have doubts. That doesn't disappear overnight. Some mornings the old voices come back. The ones that question your worth, your ability, your direction. But now you recognize them. You don't let them drive. You remind yourself why you started. Not to prove anything to anyone. Not to be better than someone else. But to be aligned with who you know you can become. There will be days when you fall off. When you miss a habit. When you feel like you're going backward. And in the past that would have been enough to make you quit. To tell yourself the story that you always tell, that you're inconsistent, that you never finish what you start. But now you pause. You don't spiral. You don't punish yourself. You don't turn one mistake into an identity. You simply return. That's discipline. Not perfection but return. Slowly your relationship with yourself changes. You stop seeing yourself as a project that needs fixing and start seeing yourself as a person who deserves commitment. Someone worth showing up for even on hard days. You begin to trust yourself again. And that trust becomes the foundation for everything else. Your goals feel closer not because they've changed but because you have. You're no longer chasing the future from a place of desperation. You're building it from a place of direction. You don't need applause. You don't need permission. You don't need to explain your path. You just keep going. Quietly. Consistently. With focus. And one day you'll look back and realize that the most powerful moment wasn't when everything finally worked out. It was the moment you decided to stop leaking your energy and start directing it. The moment you chose yourself. The moment you began. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. It doesn't arrive with noise or drama. No big speech. No announcement. It comes quietly, almost unnoticed, like a thought that refuses to leave once it enters your mind. You could be doing something ordinary, sitting alone with your phone, driving with the radio off, lying awake staring at the ceiling, and suddenly you realize something has to change. Not later. Not someday. No. And here is the part nobody prepares you for. When you truly focus on yourself, you will feel alone. Not instantly. At first, it feels empowering. You feel clear. Motivated. Like you finally know what you need to do. You start waking up with intention. You organize your time. You cut back on things that waste your energy. You tell yourself this time is different. But slowly, quietly, the loneliness creeps in. You notice it when you stop replying as fast as you used to. When you cancel plans because you need rest or focus. When you choose to stay home and work while everyone else is out enjoying themselves. The world around you keeps moving the same way it always has, but you don't move with it anymore. And that's when people start noticing. Friends may not understand. They'll joke about how serious you've become. They'll say you're acting different like it's a bad thing. Some will try to pull you back into old habits not because they hate you but because change makes people uncomfortable. It reminds them of what they're avoiding. Family may question your choices. They might ask why you're working so hard, why you're always tired, why you don't relax like you used to. Sometimes it comes from concern. Sometimes from fear. Sometimes from a lack of vision they don't even realize they have. People may say you are obsessed or distant. And that hurts more than you expect. Because you're not trying to be better than anyone. You're not trying to disappear. You're just trying to build something inside yourself that you've neglected for too long. You're trying to become someone you can respect when you're alone with your thoughts. Still, the comments get to you. You start questioning yourself late at night. You wonder if you're pushing too hard. If you're taking this too seriously. If maybe you should slow down and go back to being easier, more available, more comfortable. This is the dangerous part. Because this is where most people quit. Not because they lack discipline. Not because they lack ability. But because they can't handle being misunderstood. That's when you remember something important. Let them. Let them think you've changed. Let them say you're distant. Let them misunderstand your silence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for trying to improve your life. Every winner walks alone before they walk on stage. No one sees the early mornings when your body feels heavy and your mind tries to convince you to stay in bed. No one sees the nights you go to sleep tired but proud because you kept a promise to yourself. No one applauds the discipline it takes to choose progress when comfort is right there. Focus requires saying no. No to distractions that feel harmless but steal hours from your life. No to comfort that keeps you soft and stuck. No to unnecessary conversations that drain you without giving anything back. Saying no feels awkward at first. It feels selfish. You'll feel guilty for not being available, for not showing up the way you used to. You'll feel like you're missing out. But slowly you realize something. A lot of what you were afraid of missing out on was never helping you grow. Focus means choosing long-term growth over short-term pleasure. And that choice is not glamorous. It doesn't feel exciting most days. It feels repetitive. Feels boring. Feels lonely. Long-term growth doesn't shout. It whispers. It whispers when you choose discipline instead of impulse. When you show up even though no one is watching. When you do the work without posting about it. This road is quiet. There are no cheers. No applause. Sometimes the silence feels heavy. You'll wonder if you're doing all this for nothing. You'll question if progress is even happening because nothing around you seems to be changing yet. But something is changing. You're changing. You start to notice it in small ways. You react less emotionally. You waste less time. You feel more grounded in your decisions. You trust yourself a little more than you did before. You still have bad days. Days where motivation disappears. Days where loneliness hits harder than usual. Days where you miss the old version of your life simply because it was easier. But now you don't quit on those days. You rest if you need to. You slow down if you must. But you don't walk away. That's progress. Progress isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes progress is just not giving up when everything feels quiet and uncertain. Over time, your energy stops leaking. You're no longer arguing with people who don't matter. You're no longer chasing validation. You're no longer waiting for the perfect moment to start. Your energy is finally directed. And one day, without realizing when it happened, the loneliness starts to feel different. It no longer feels empty. It feels focused. It feels peaceful. It feels like space to think, to grow, to build. You understand now that this solitude wasn't punishment. It was preparation. The silence taught you discipline. The distance taught you clarity. The lack of applause taught you self-respect. And when results eventually come, because they always come when consistency stays, people will suddenly notice. They'll ask how you did it. They'll say you changed. They'll call it luck. But you'll know the truth. It started with a quiet decision. A decision to focus. A decision to walk alone when necessary. And even though this road was quiet, even though it tested you in ways no one warned you about, it made you stronger. Because progress, even when silent, is powerful. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. It doesn't feel heroic. It doesn't feel inspiring at first. It usually shows up when you're tired, mentally tired, emotionally tired, tired of starting over, tired of wanting more and feeling stuck in the same place. It comes quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day, when you suddenly realize that something inside you is done with excuses. You're done waiting to feel different before you act. You're done waiting for motivation to save you. You're done hoping something external will change your life. That's when you understand something simple but uncomfortable. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is intentional. Motivation feels good. Discipline doesn't always. Motivation is that spark you feel when you watch a video, hear a story, or imagine a better version of yourself. It fills you with energy for a moment. It makes you believe everything is possible. It convinces you that this time you're going to change everything. But motivation comes and goes. It disappears when you're tired. It disappears when things get boring. It disappears when progress is slow. Discipline stays. Discipline doesn't care how you feel when you wake up. It doesn't ask if you're confident today or inspired today. Discipline only asks one question: will you show up anyway? And when you finally focus on yourself, truly focus, you stop waiting to feel ready. You stop saying, "I'll start when I feel motivated." You stop saying, "I'll do it when I'm confident." You stop saying, "I'll try again when life calms down." You show up even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. At first, this feels unnatural. You're used to letting emotions decide your actions. If you feel good, you work. If you feel bad, you wait. If you feel inspired, you start. If you feel tired, you stop. But discipline flips that pattern. With discipline, action comes first. Feelings follow later. So you work when it's boring. You sit down to do the thing you said you would do, even though your mind tries to escape. Even though every few minutes you feel the urge to check your phone, to get up, to do something easier. You notice how uncomfortable boredom really is when you don't numb it. You practice when it's hard. When you don't understand it yet. When you're not good at it. When you make mistakes and feel slow and awkward and behind. When your progress feels embarrassing compared to where you think you should be. You continue when results are invisible. This might be the hardest part. Because humans like proof. We like feedback. We like signs that we're moving in the right direction. And when you first start building discipline, there isn't much to look at. No one is clapping. Nothing dramatic is changing. Your life looks mostly the same from the outside. You're putting in effort, but there's no reward yet. You're sacrificing comfort, but nothing has paid off. You're showing up, but the scale hasn't moved, the money hasn't grown, the skills don't feel sharp yet. And this is where most people quit. Not because they're incapable. Not because they're lazy. But because they confuse silence with failure. They think if nothing is happening, then this must not be working. They think if I don't feel different yet, then maybe I'm wasting my time. They think if no one notices, then what's the point? But silence is not failure. Silence is growth happening underground. Think about it. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when distraction becomes a habit. You reach for your phone without thinking. You check notifications even when there are none. You feel uncomfortable sitting with silence. Silence forces you to face yourself. Your thoughts. Your doubts. Your unfinished goals. Distraction protects you from that discomfort. But it also keeps you stuck. You tell yourself you're tired. You tell yourself you'll do it later. You tell yourself now is not the right time. And those excuses feel reasonable. They sound logical. They don't feel like quitting. But over time they add up. And one day you wake up and realize how much time passed. That realization hurts. Not because time passed, but because you know you could have used it better. When your focus is scattered, even big effort feels small. You push but you don't move far. You try harder but results don't change. That's when frustration grows. You start questioning yourself. Why am I not progressing? Why does it feel so hard? Why does everyone else seem ahead? And comparison creeps back in. You look at others and assume they are more disciplined, more talented, more lucky. But you don't see their focus. You don't see the hours they protected. You don't see the distractions they removed. You don't see the things they said no to. Because focus is invisible. Until results appear. But when your focus becomes sharp, even small effort becomes powerful. This is where everything changes. Sharp focus feels different. Calmer. Clear. You stop trying to do everything. You choose one thing that matters today. Just one. And you give it your full attention. No phone nearby. No unnecessary noise. No multitasking. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your mind wanders. You feel restless. But then something happens. You start to feel present. Time slows down. Your thoughts become quieter. Your effort becomes intentional. And that one small task moves forward. It's not dramatic, but it's real. The next day you do it again. And again. Small effort. Same direction. And slowly momentum builds. Focus is not about doing more. It is about removing what doesn't matter. This is the part most people miss. They think productivity means adding more tasks, more goals, more pressure. But real focus works in reverse. It asks, what is unnecessary? What is distracting? What is draining my energy without giving anything back? Sometimes that means limiting social media. Sometimes it means distancing yourself from certain conversations. Sometimes it means saying no even when it feels uncomfortable. Removing things feels scary. It feels like you're missing out. But clarity lives on the other side of that fear. When you remove distractions, you create space. Space to think. Space to reflect. Space to work deeply. And deep work changes you. Every small promise you keep to yourself builds trust. The first time you wake up when you said you would, even though you wanted to sleep longer, you feel something subtle shift. Not excitement. Not pride. Just a quiet acknowledgement. I said I would and I did. When you choose to work for 30 minutes instead of scrolling, even when no one knows about it, something changes inside you. When you go for that walk, finish that workout, practice that skill, read those pages, especially on days you don't feel like it, you're not just building a habit. You're building a relationship with yourself. And trust is the foundation of confidence. Every habit you maintain builds belief. Belief that you can follow through. Belief that your words mean something. Belief that you don't quit the moment things get uncomfortable. At first, the belief is fragile. One missed day can make you doubt everything. One slip can feel like proof that you're still the same person you've always been. But instead of spiraling, you learn to return. You miss a day and you come back the next. You fall short, and you adjust instead of quitting. You feel tired, and you do what you can instead of doing nothing. And slowly, something important happens. You stop needing to convince yourself who you are. Your actions start doing that for you. When you focus on yourself daily, confidence becomes natural. Not loud. Not flashy. Natural. It grows quietly, like strength in a muscle that's been trained consistently. You don't notice it after one workout. You notice it months later when something that used to feel heavy suddenly feels manageable. You start carrying yourself differently. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. You're not constantly questioning whether you'll show up. You already know the answer. Yes, you will. That certainty changes everything. You stop seeking approval. Not because you don't care about people, but because you no longer need them to confirm your worth. Compliments become nice but not necessary. Criticism still stings, but it doesn't define you. You stop needing reassurance. You don't need someone to tell you you're doing enough. You don't need constant feedback to keep going. You don't need external motivation to push you forward. Why? Because you know the work you're putting in. You know how early you wake up. You know what you choose to do when no one is watching. You know how many times you wanted to quit, and didn't. That knowledge becomes your anchor. Even on days when doubt creeps in, and it will, you have something solid to stand on. You don't argue with doubt using words. You answer it with proof. Proof that you're consistent. Proof that you're disciplined. Proof that you're growing even if slowly. And that's when confidence changes form. It becomes quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to dominate conversations. It doesn't need to prove anything. It walks calmly into rooms because it knows its value. Not in an arrogant way. Not in a way that looks down on others. In a grounded way. A steady way. The kind of confidence that listens more than it speaks. the kind that doesn't rush to be seen. You stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. You stop rushing your process. You stop doubting your pace, because you're focused on what you can control, focused on your habits, focused on your consistency. You understand now that confidence is not built in one big moment. It's built in hundreds of small ones that no one ever sees. It's built when you keep going even when progress feels invisible. When you choose discipline over comfort. When you honor your word to yourself again and again. Some days confidence feels strong. Other days it feels quiet. But it's always there because it's no longer tied to emotion. It's tied to identity. You're not confident because you feel good. You're confident because you live with integrity. And that kind of confidence can't be taken from you. It doesn't disappear when you fail. It doesn't vanish when you're challenged. It doesn't break when someone doubts you. Because it was never built on opinion. It was built on focus and consistency. Day by day. Choice by choice. Promise by promise. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. And when you decide to stop chasing confidence and start earning it, you don't just change how you feel. You change how you stand. How you speak. How you move through the world. Quietly. Calmly. Certain. Because you know who you are becoming. And you're doing the work to get these. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. Not the kind you announce. Not the kind you post online with a caption and a bold promise. It's quieter than that. It happens somewhere between disappointment and hope, somewhere between being tired of your own habits and still believing you can change them. You make the decision and at first, it feels like nothing. You still wake up with the same responsibilities, the same messages, the same bills, the same family expectations, the same pressure sitting on your shoulders like it has been sitting there for years. The world doesn't pause because you decided to take yourself seriously. And if you're being honest, the first days of focus can feel like walking through fog. You're doing the work, but you're not sure if it's doing anything back. You're trying to be disciplined, but your mind keeps reaching for the old shortcuts. You're trying to change, but your life still looks the same. So you keep going. Quietly. You show up when it's boring. You show up when it's hard. You show up when no one claps and no one checks on you and no one even knows you're trying. Some days you do it perfectly. Most days you don't. There are mornings when you wake up and your body feels heavy and your first thought is, not today. You sit on the edge of your bed and stare at the floor like the floor has answers. You can hear the world starting outside, cars, voices, small noises, but inside your room it's just you and your thoughts. And your thoughts are loud. They remind you of every time you started something and didn't finish. Every time you promised yourself you'd be consistent and then disappeared after a week. Every time you got excited and then lost momentum. Your mind plays those memories like a warning. Don't get your hopes up. You know how this ends. That's when discipline becomes real. Because discipline isn't what you do when you feel powerful. Discipline is what you do when you don't trust yourself yet, and you show up anyway. So you stand up. Maybe not fast. Maybe not confident. But you stand. You wash your face. You drink water. You do the small routine you promised yourself you'd do. You sit down and work for a set amount of time. You practice. You train. You read. You write. You move your body. You take one step. And then another. At first it feels like you're dragging yourself forward. Like your life is a car stuck in sand and you're pushing it with your bare hands. You look around and wonder how other people seem to move so smoothly like they were born with purpose. But you keep going. Not because it feels good. Because you're done with who you were becoming without direction. Weeks pass like this. Quiet effort. Small routines. Hard days. Good days. Repeated decisions. Some failures. Some wins. You don't talk about it much. You don't need to. The work is personal now. Just between you and you. And then one day something shifts. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. But clearly. It might happen in the middle of a normal morning. You're pouring coffee or tying your shoes or standing in front of the mirror. Nothing special is happening, and yet you feel it. Something inside you feels steadier than it used to. Your thinking sharpens. It's not that you suddenly become a different person overnight. It's more like your mind is less cluttered. You stop carrying so many useless thoughts. You stop replaying arguments that happened weeks ago. You stop wasting energy imagining what people might be thinking about you. Your thoughts start feeling cleaner. More direct. You begin to notice problems and solve them instead of panicking. You start making decisions faster because you aren't trapped in overthinking. You can actually hear your own voice under the noise. And your energy improves. Not the fake energy you get from hype. Real energy, the kind that comes from sleep, water, movement, and fewer late-night battles with your own mind. You still get tired, of course you do. But it's a different kind of tired now. It's the tired that comes after effort, not the tired that comes from wasting your life. You find yourself waking up with less dread. You walk through your day with a little more air in your chest, like you can breathe again. You feel lighter, not because life got easier but because you stopped carrying things you didn't need to carry. And your actions feel aligned. That's a big one. Because before, your actions and your goals didn't match. You said you wanted change but you lived like you didn't. You said you wanted growth but you chose comfort. You said you wanted discipline but you waited for motivation. Now you start noticing a new feeling: alignment. You do what you said you would do. And when you don't, you correct yourself quickly instead of falling apart. You don't need a perfect mood to follow through. You don't need permission. You don't need a speech. You just move. That's when it hits you. You realize you are no longer surviving. You are building. Surviving is waking up just to get through the day. Surviving is avoiding pain, avoiding discomfort, avoiding anything that challenges you. Surviving is living in reaction, reacting to people, reacting to problems, reacting to emotions like they're in control of you. Building is different. Building means you have direction. It means you're willing to endure discomfort for something bigger than your current mood. It means you're not just trying to escape a hard life, you're creating a better one. And the craziest part is, people around you may not notice yet. Because external results take time. The world won't hand you proof right away. Your bank account might still look the same. Your body might still be in progress. Your dreams might still be far away. Nothing on the outside may look impressive yet. But you do. You notice because you feel it in your body, in your mind, in the way you respond to life. You handle pressure better. Something that would have crushed you before, an unexpected problem, criticism, a stressful moment, now feels manageable. Not easy but manageable. You don't collapse. You don't spiral. You don't start blaming everyone and everything. You pause. You breathe. You think. And you respond. You react less emotionally. Not because you became cold. Because you became stable. Before, one small thing could ruin your entire day. A text. A comment. A delay. Someone's tone of voice. A mistake. You would feel everything at once and your emotions would drive the car. Now your emotions are still there but they're not steering anymore. They're passengers. You acknowledge them, you feel them, but you don't obey them. That's growth. You move with purpose. Purpose doesn't mean you always know every step. It means you know the direction. It means you wake up with intention instead of confusion. It means you choose what matters even when the easy option is right there. You start protecting your time. Protecting your energy. Protecting your peace. And that becomes a quiet kind of power. This is the turning point. The moment when focusing on yourself starts paying off internally before it pays off externally. And that internal payoff is everything. Because external rewards can be taken away. They can change. They can be delayed. They can disappoint you. If your commitment depends on visible results, your commitment will always be fragile. But when your reward becomes internal, when you genuinely feel stronger, clearer, more disciplined, something dangerous happens. You stop depending on outcomes to stay committed. You stop needing proof to keep going. You stop needing someone to clap. You don't need life to be perfect to stay consistent. You don't need the results to show up quickly to keep showing up. You don't need reassurance because the work itself has become your reassurance. That is the most dangerous version of you. Dangerous not in a loud way. Not in a reckless way. Dangerous in a quiet way. Because nothing can stop someone who has learned how to keep going without applause. Nothing can break someone who has stopped negotiating with comfort. Nothing can distract someone who knows what they're building. At this point, even setbacks don't hit the same. You still feel disappointment, of course. You're human. But disappointment doesn't make you quit. It makes you adjust. It makes you learn. It makes you come back sharper. Even failures become useful now. You don't see them as proof you're not good enough. You see them as data. As feedback. As part of the process. You stop taking everything personally because you're no longer building your ego. You're building your life. And slowly, you begin to understand something that most people never understand. The real victory isn't the moment the world sees you. The real victory is the moment you see yourself. The moment you look at your own life and realize, I'm not the same person. Not because you got lucky. Not because something magical happened. But because you made a decision, and you kept honoring it. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. And then, if you keep going long enough, there comes a moment when the decision starts turning into a person. A person who doesn't wait. A person who doesn't need motivation. A person who doesn't need approval. A person who builds in silence and stays committed through storms. And once you become that person, the results on the outside will come. But by then you won't even be desperate for them. Because you'll already have the thing that matters most. A focused mind. A disciplined heart. A steady identity. And that's why you become unstoppable. Not because life gets easier. Because you finally got stronger. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. Not a loud decision. Not the kind you announce with a post or a promise to everyone around you. It's quiet. Private. Almost invisible. It happens when you're alone with your thoughts and you realize you can't keep living the same way and expecting a different life. You don't even feel brave when you decide. You just feel tired. Tired of your own patterns, tired of starting and stopping, tired of saying, soon, tired of watching time pass while you keep telling yourself you'll get serious later. So you make the decision. And then you learn something that nobody really explains. The beginning doesn't reward you. At first, nothing changes on the outside. The world doesn't clap. Life doesn't get softer. Your problems don't disappear. Your schedule still feels heavy. Your mind still tries to pull you back to what's comfortable. You start waking up earlier but you still feel sleepy. You start working on your goals but you still feel behind. You start changing your habits but the old cravings still show up. Some days it feels like you're doing so much and getting nothing in return. That silence tests you. It tests you on the days when you don't feel motivated. On the days when you're bored. On the days when you're lonely. On the days when doubt sits on your chest and whispers, what if this doesn't work? What if you're wasting your time? Because when you're building something real, there's a phase where progress is happening, but it isn't visible yet. And most people don't have the patience for invisible growth. But you keep going. Not perfectly. Not like a machine. You have days where you mess up. You have days where you do the minimum. You have days where you want to quit and your mind tries to convince you that you've already failed. And still, you return. You return to the routine. You return to the work. You return to the promise you made to yourself. That's where the real change starts. Not when you feel inspired, but when you stop relying on inspiration. Because focus doesn't feel like fire every day. Some days focus feels like discipline. Like choosing the boring option. Like doing the same thing again even when you're not excited. Like turning down distractions even when they look fun. And that's where most people never make it. Not because they can't work hard, but because they want quick proof. They want results before they've built the foundation. But you're building the foundation anyway. You start to notice small things first. Your mornings become less chaotic. Your mind becomes a little clearer. Your body starts feeling stronger in tiny ways. You stop wasting as much time arguing with yourself. You stop needing so many reminders. You begin to show up automatically like it's just what you do now. You don't always feel confident, but you feel consistent. And consistency is louder than confidence. Weeks turn into months. You keep choosing focus over comfort. You keep choosing what matters over what's easy. You start saying no more often, to distractions, to unnecessary conversations, to people who don't understand what you're building. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels unfair. Sometimes you watch other people enjoying life and you wonder if you're missing out. But deep down, you know what you're really doing. You're not missing out. You're investing. And eventually results arrive. Not because you chased them, but because you earned them. That moment is almost shocking. Not because it's loud, but because it's real. You wake up one day and realize you're better at what you do. You handle pressure differently. You think with more clarity. You move with more purpose. You don't panic like you used to. It's not just one big win. It's a collection of small wins finally adding up to something you can see. Your skills improve. Not magically. Not overnight. But because you practiced when it was boring. You showed up when you didn't feel like it. You stayed in the process long enough for your mind and your hands to learn what repetition teaches. You notice you're faster now. Sharper. More confident in your ability to handle the work. Things that used to overwhelm you now feel manageable. Challenges don't scare you the same way because you've already been doing hard things quietly for a long time. Your mindset matures. You stop reacting like everything is an emergency. You stop taking every setback personally. You stop letting one mistake destroy your entire week. You start seeing problems as part of the path, not proof that you're not good enough. You become calmer. Not because life got easier, because you got stronger. Your discipline compounds. This is the part people don't understand. Discipline is like interest. The more you build, the more it builds you back. At first, it feels like effort with no reward. But over time, the effort starts producing momentum. You don't spend as much energy trying to start. You don't fight yourself as much. You don't waste time negotiating with your habits. You just do the work. And that's when the outside starts to catch up with the inside. Now people notice. At first it's subtle. Someone says, "You've been doing good lately." Someone asks, "What have you been up to?" Someone looks at you a little longer than usual, like they're trying to understand what changed. Then it becomes louder. They ask questions. How did you do that? What's your routine? How do you stay consistent? How did you improve so fast? They seek advice. They start watching you the way you once watched others. They want to know your secret. They want to know what you did differently. They want a shortcut, a hack, a sentence that makes it easy. And then almost always they call it luck. They say, "You're lucky." They say, "It just worked out for you." They say, "It happened at the right time." They say, "You're naturally talented." And you don't even get angry. Because you understand something now. People will always label what they didn't witness. They didn't see the days you chose focus over fun. They didn't see you staying home when everyone else went out. They didn't see you turning down invitations because you had work to do. They didn't see you waking up early when your body begged for more sleep. They didn't feel the doubt you pushed through. They weren't in your head on those nights when you questioned everything. They weren't there when you stared at the ceiling and wondered if you were wasting your time. They weren't there when your mind tried to drag you back to old habits and you had to fight yourself just to stay on track. They didn't experience the discipline you built. They didn't experience the days when you had no motivation and still showed up. They didn't experience the boredom, the repetition, the lonely moments where it felt like nobody understood why you were doing this. They didn't experience the patience it took to keep going without proof. So of course they call it luck. They only saw the result. They didn't see the process. Let them talk. Let them call it whatever they want. Let them misunderstand the timeline. Let them think it happened overnight. Let them act like it was easy. Because you know the truth. You remember the quiet mornings. The private sacrifices. The times you said no when nobody would have blamed you for saying yes. The times you kept going when quitting would have been easier. You remember the version of you that almost gave up. And you remember why you didn't. Because you made a decision. And you honored it. Day after day. Even when no one noticed. Focus built this. Not luck. Not perfect timing. Not magic. Focus. Focus that kept your energy from leaking into distractions and people's opinions. Focus that helped you choose what mattered. Focus that kept you patient when growth was invisible. Focus that taught you to build in silence. And when the results arrive, you don't become loud about it. You don't need to. Because real confidence is quiet. You just keep working. You keep building. You keep protecting your focus, because now you understand its value. And if you ever feel tempted to forget where it came from, you only have to remember this. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. And the day you chose focus is the day you started earning everything you have now. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. At first, that decision feels like survival. Like you're just trying to get out of the place you've been stuck in for too long. You're not thinking about winning yet. You're thinking about not quitting. About holding yourself together. About proving to yourself that you can change it all. You focus. You discipline yourself. You build in silence. And then one day you win. Not in the way movies show it. Not with confetti and celebration and instant happiness. Sometimes the win is quiet. Sometimes it's a moment where you stop and realize I'm not the same person anymore. Sometimes it's a result that finally shows up after months or years of invisible effort. But when it happens, it hits you deep. Winning changes you. It doesn't just make you happy. It makes you aware. Aware of what's possible when you commit fully. Aware of how much potential you were leaving unused before. Aware of how powerful focused effort really is. You look back at the version of yourself who was distracted, inconsistent, unsure, and you almost feel compassion for them. You understand now why things didn't work back then. Not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't committed in the way commitment actually requires. Winning shows you that growth is real. That discipline works. That patience pays off. That consistency compounds. And at the same time, winning humbles you. Because you realize how much there still is to learn. Winning once does not mean you relax forever. This is where many people lose everything they built. They confuse winning with arrival. They think one success means they can coast. They tell themselves, I deserve a break now. And a break slowly turns into comfort. Comfort turns into distraction. Distraction turns into old habits. And before they realize it, they're back where they started, except now the fall hurts more because they know what they lost. But winning taught you something different. Winning once doesn't mean you stop. It means you raise your standard. Your standard for how you spend your time. Your standard for how you treat your body. Your standard for how you think. You no longer accept the version of life you once tolerated. Things you used to let slide now bother you. Wasted mornings feel heavier. Meaningless conversations drain you faster. Scattered days feel uncomfortable. It's not because you became strict or boring, it's because you've seen what focus can do. And once you've seen that, you can't unsee it. Now you understand something clearly. Focus is not temporary. It is a way of living. It's not something you turn on only when things are bad. It's not something you use only to get back on track. Focus becomes your baseline, your default, the way you move through your days. You stop asking, how little can I do and still succeed? You start asking, what kind of person do I need to be to sustain this? That shift changes everything. You protect your time. You stop giving it away carelessly. You become selective with where your hours go because you remember the nights you stayed up late working while others slept. You remember how precious uninterrupted time felt when you finally had it. You don't explain yourself as much anymore. You don't feel guilty for saying no. You understand that every yes costs something, and you choose carefully what deserves that cost. You protect your energy. You pay attention to what drains you and what fuels you. You notice how certain environments leave you exhausted, how certain people pull you back into old patterns, how certain habits quietly undo the progress you worked so hard for. So you adjust. You rest with intention, not escape. You socialize with awareness, not obligation. You take breaks to recover, not to disappear. You protect your mindset. This might be the most important part. You guard your thoughts the way you once guarded your goals. You're careful about what you consume, what you listen to, what you allow to influence you. Not because you're afraid, but because you're disciplined. You've seen how fragile momentum can be if you let negativity, comparison, and distraction run wild. You've seen how quickly doubt can grow if you feed it, so you don't. When negative thoughts show up, you don't panic, but you don't entertain them either. You acknowledge them and return to the work. You trust the process because you've lived the proof. All of this comes from one deep truth. You know how hard it was to build. You remember the early days when nothing made sense. The days when you worked without results. The nights when you questioned yourself. The moments when quitting would have been easier and no one would have blamed you. You remember the discipline it took to stay consistent when motivation was gone. The patience it took to wait without guarantees. The focus it took to keep going when distractions were everywhere. That memory stays with you. Keeps you grounded. It keeps you hungry. Keeps you sharp. And because of that, you refuse to lose it to distraction again. You refuse to go back to living on autopilot. You refuse to give up clarity for comfort. You refuse to trade long-term growth for short-term pleasure. Not because you're afraid of failure, but because you respect yourself now. You respect the work you put in. You respect the version of you who didn't quit. You respect the life you're building. Winning didn't make you careless. Winning made you intentional. It showed you that discipline is not a phase. That focus is not something you try. That growth is not something you finish. It's something you live. And that's the real victory. Not the result itself, but the standard you refuse to lower after achieving it. Because once you've built something meaningful inside yourself, you protect it at all costs. And that's why you don't stop. You keep going. You keep refining. You keep choosing focus. Not because you have to, but because you know exactly what happens when you do. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. It doesn't come when everything is clear. It doesn't wait for confidence or perfect timing. It usually arrives when you're tired, uncertain, and questioning yourself more than ever. It comes when you're standing in the middle of effort and doubt, wondering if all this work is actually leading somewhere or if you're just exhausting yourself for nothing. That moment asks a simple question. Will you keep going, or will you stop? You've already come far to reach this point. Farther than most people ever do. Because most people never sit still long enough to hear that question clearly. They stay busy, distracted, loud. They keep moving just enough to avoid facing themselves. But you didn't. You slowed down. You looked inward. You chose to focus on yourself even when it was uncomfortable, even when it felt lonely, even when no one else seemed to understand why you were doing it. And now here you are. Here is the final lesson. Winning is not the end. It is proof. That idea takes time to fully sink in. When you first start this journey, winning feels like the destination. The thing that will finally make all the struggle worth it. You imagine the relief, the validation, the moment where you can finally breathe and say, I made it. But when winning actually happens, when you finally see results, when something you worked for becomes real, you realize it doesn't feel like an ending. Feels like confirmation. Proof that the nights you kept going mattered. Proof that the boring days weren't wasted. Proof that discipline works even when motivation disappears. Winning proves something far more important than talent or luck. It proves that when you focus on yourself, results follow. Not immediately, not easily, but eventually, and that changes how you see everything. You stop seeing success as something reserved for other people. You stop thinking some people are just built differently. You realize that the gap between where you were and where you are now wasn't magic, it was focus repeated daily through doubt and discomfort. That realization is powerful, and grounding, and humbling, because it also reminds you how fragile progress can be if you forget how it was built. So if you are struggling right now, remember this. If you're in the phase where effort feels invisible, if you're tired of trying without applause, if you're wondering whether you're falling behind, this message is for you. You don't need to be faster. You don't need to rush your process just because someone else seems ahead. Speed without direction only leads to burnout. Growth has its own rhythm, and forcing it usually breaks something inside you. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to announce your goals. You don't need to prove anything online. You don't need to convince people you're working hard. Loud effort is often insecure effort. Real progress doesn't need an audience. You don't need to be perfect. Perfection is the most dangerous excuse of all. Keeps you waiting. It keeps you planning instead of doing. It convinces you that mistakes mean failure, when in reality, mistakes are part of learning how to win. You don't need any of that. You need to be focused. Focused when it's boring. Focused when it's quiet. Focused when your emotions tell you to quit. Focus is what keeps you grounded when motivation fades. Focus is what turns chaos into direction. Focus is what allows small efforts to compound into something meaningful over time. Focus on your habits. Not the big dramatic moves, the small daily ones. The way you start your mornings. The way you use your time when no one is watching. The choices you make when it would be easy to choose comfort instead. Habits are the invisible architecture of your life. You don't notice them day to day, but they decide everything long term. Change your habits and you change the direction you're heading, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Focus on your growth. Not comparison. Not competition. Growth. Your growth won't look like anyone else's. It won't move at the same speed. It won't follow a straight line. Some days you'll feel ahead. Some days you'll feel like you're starting over. That doesn't mean you are. Growth is messy, uneven, quiet, and deeply personal. Measure yourself against who you were yesterday, not against someone else's highlight reel. If you're learning, adjusting, and continuing, you are growing. Focus on your next small step. Not the entire mountain. Not the final outcome. Just the next step you can take today. The next page. The next rep. The next hour of honest work. Small steps feel insignificant, but they are the only steps that actually move you forward. No one jumps their way to a meaningful life. They walk it, one step at a time. Ignore the noise, the opinions, the comparisons, the pressure to do more, be more, show more. Most noise comes from people who aren't walking your path and never will. Their words don't build your future, your actions do. Silence the distractions that pull you away from your focus. Protect your attention like it matters, because it does. Your attention shapes your thoughts shape your actions, and your actions shape your life. Trust the process, not blindly, not naively, but patiently. Trust that consistent effort adds up even when you can't see it yet. Trust that learning takes time. Trust that becoming someone stronger doesn't happen overnight. Every version of you that made it through a hard season had to trust the process before it made sense. Stay consistent. Consistency is not intensity. It's reliability. It's showing up even when the day doesn't feel important. It's choosing progress over drama. It's returning after setbacks instead of quitting. Consistency is how ordinary effort becomes extraordinary results. Focus on you until you win. Not because winning makes you worthy, but because staying focused teaches you who you are capable of becoming. The win is simply evidence that the work was real. And when you win, don't stop. When you win, focus again. Because winning isn't a finish line, it's feedback. It tells you this works. Keep going. It tells you that your system, your habits, your discipline are aligned. And alignment is something you maintain, not something you achieve once. Every new level requires the same focus that got you here, just refined, sharpened, and protected even more carefully. Because the greatest victory isn't the result. It's becoming someone who never quits on themselves. Someone who doesn't disappear when things get hard. Someone who doesn't abandon their standards when comfort calls. Someone who knows how to reset, refocus, and continue. That person is unstoppable, not because they never struggle but because they never give up ownership of their life. There comes a moment in every serious journey when you must make a decision. And if you keep choosing focus, quietly, consistently, and honestly, you won't just win once. You'll become someone who always finds a